So last year I made a video talking about one of my favorite PlayStation 2 games called Tulip, and for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's an interesting video game to say the least. Created by Japanese studio Punchline and directed by Yoshiro Kimura, Tulip is a game where you play as a poor boy who just moved into town, and all you really do in it is walk around and talk to some people. You really get to know them, sometimes you even kiss them, and then you go to sleep to level up. Now, I know that might not sound like the most exciting game ever, but trust me, there's a lot of charm and a genuinely positive message within this game and its concept. And if I had to describe what that message is in a word, I'd say compassion. The poor boy basically lends an ear to everyone's troubles, no matter their oddities, and by doing so, he improves their lives. The game's central themes of love and human connections are really endearing to me, and not to be a downer or anything, but it's a game I rediscovered when I was going through a dark period of my own, and it really helped me out at the time. I have a personal love for this game. Of course, it has its flaws as well, but it really upsets me that this game wasn't very successful because it's the definition of a hidden gem to me. It's fun to play, the story is compelling, it's unique. I mean, I had never played or heard of anything like Tulip at the time. I thought it was a completely one-of-a-kind title, but little did I know, there was a Tulip before Tulip. Released back in 1997 for the PlayStation, Moon Remix RPG Adventure was the first of only 3 games to be made by the tiny Japanese studio known as Love-De-Lic. Their staff mostly consisted of former Square employees who left the company for more creative control in what they made. And just to name a few people on the team, there was Kenichi Nishi. He's credited with working on Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG. There's Taro Kudo, he also did work on Super Mario RPG, and Yoshiro Kimura. As the game's title suggests, Moon isn't your typical RPG. It's been described as an anti-RPG and a deconstruction of the genre, spoofing a lot of its tropes. It doesn't even have a traditional battle system. Actually, it doesn't have any battle system. Yeah, long before your Lisas and your Undertales would subvert what you expected from the RPG genre, there was Moon. As a matter of fact, Toby Fox even cites Moon as an inspiration for Undertale. But unfortunately, Moon never came out in the West. It was released in Japan exclusively, and Love-De-Lic was so short-lived, disbanding in 2000 after only 5 years, that there was never much of a chance that the game would ever be released in English officially. That is, until Toby Fox again. So here's the thing. After Love-De-Lic dissolved, Nishi, Kudo, and Kimura would stay in the game industry but go on to start their own companies. Nishi created Skip Limited. You probably know them best for making Chibi-Robo. Kudo co-founded Vanpool, who basically became second-party developers for Nintendo. And Kimura made Punchline. That's where we get Tulip from. But Punchline died pretty quickly too, and sometime in 2012, Kimura would start his current company, Onion Games. They've mostly made mobile games, but in 2018, Kimura would find himself in an interview with, get this, Toby Fox and Zune. And as Kimura recalls, he and Toby would get coffee together and talk some more after the interview was over. At one point, Toby asked Kimura why Moon never saw a global release, and in response, Kimura basically told Toby that there's no way he could have done it. But then Kimura asked himself, why couldn't he? So his company Onion Games obtained Moon's publishing rights, and it was revealed they were re-releasing it for the Nintendo Switch during a direct held in September of 2019. Sometime later, they announced it would be receiving a full English translation and also be released for other consoles, including PC. That's how I played it. And I've been wanting to talk about this one for a while. Ever since I uploaded that Tulip video, I've had people tell me you gotta try Moon to see where it all comes from. I also said in that video that I wanted to play all the Love-De-Lic games, from the company itself and its alumni, and now that I've finally played Moon, I can finally talk about Moon. So let's start with the story as always. It begins right on the title screen. In the main menu, you see nothing but the game's title and a television that has a game console attached to it, and it's all covered by this noisy green static. However, after you start a new game, the green noise fades away while a moonlit window appears and a young child walks into sight. The boy begins to play on his console, and we read the game's entire prologue. There's something about a dragon castle in the land of Love-De-Lic and internal darkness corrupting the moon's light. The dragon was created from that darkness. It's kinda hard to read all this because it goes by so fast. Okay, I'm not reading all that. We can play the game now. So you push start to start a new game and name yourself. I'm gonna go with Cosmo, of course. And now it's starting to look like a game. We play as this hero knight guy right here, and we start in a royal court. Walk up to the king and he'll tell you to slay the dragon. Talk to the minister and he'll tell you to slay the dragon's friend so you can grow stronger. And heading out, we have our first battle against a sick looking dog. It attacks you by wagging its tail. That does nothing. So you retaliate by trying to attack it, but it just runs away. Alright, I guess. Walking around town, you can see some of the townsfolk and talk to a barmaid who gives you some legendary armor from her dresser. You can try to walk out, but you get pushed back by something you can't see at all. Walk out again though, and you're fine this time. You can actually just leave the town now, but you'll be booted back to the save screen. And when you start the next file, you find yourself in a field where you have your first real battle against a slime. It takes a little work, but you slay it and destroy a rock that's blocking your path. Continue walking down the screen and the hero will sense danger and equip the legendary armor you found earlier. But then a rainbow appears and the dangerous aura goes away. So you walk off screen again and get booted back to the file select screen where you load yet another save. This time we find ourselves in front of a house with a little girl who calls the spiky creature next to her gross and asks the hero to get rid of it. In the fight against the Paragon, it duplicates itself and the hero can't seem to hit either one. The second Paragon ignites itself while the first one is revealed to be an illusion and goes away. Attacking the real Paragon again, the hero defeats it with a critical hit, and we're immediately back to this screen for a final time. This last save is the oddest one of them all. The hero walks up a long flight of stairs in this sort of future world, and at the end of the stairway, the hero enters an airship where he eventually lands at the dragon's castle. When he tries to enter the first time, this weird amalgamation of monsters known as the Penultimizer faces him in battle. The hero defeats them in 2 attacks though, never even giving the enemy a chance to do anything. So you level up and head inside the castle where you finally see the dragon. So here we are in the final battle against Darkness Incarnate. The dragon is shit-talking you, and you're not gonna take that, so you attack it, and max damage. The dragon's not fighting back, so you attack it again, and max damage. You attack again, and max damage, and again, until...
Stop playing that game, and go to bed.
Mom tells you to stop playing the game and go to bed. So the child turns the console off and walks back to his bed. But the television turns itself on and the boy is isekai'd into it through a series of channels. He finally stops in one world, but he falls from the sky for a very long time. The game even cuts to another scene while we're waiting for him to fall. We see a group of people talking to each other in what looks like a courtyard. Then the knight from the game appears and walks past them and into a castle. The people talk some more and the boy finally lands in the courtyard with them. If you try talking to the bunch, you'll overhear them talking about how the world is going to end soon and how the moonlight was eaten, which is odd. But what's really weird about this scene is they don't acknowledge you at all. Try talking to them again and they just repeat themselves. You can follow the hero's footsteps and walk into the castle where you see him talking to the king and the minister. They both give him the quest of heading to the dragon's castle and defeating the dragon. The minister even says the hero needs to reach level 2 by getting 300 points of experience. After the hero departs, you can try talking to the king and minister yourself, but they don't acknowledge you either. So you walk out of the castle and into the town where you see the hero chasing a dog and all of the townsfolk talking to each other. And it should be pretty clear what's going on now. You've been transported into Love-De-Lic, the fictional world in Moon. Everything that this child has seen so far has been pretty beat for beat with what happened in the video game. Meeting the king and his minister, the hero attacking the dog, seeing all of the townsfolk. You can even leave the same way the hero did, but there's another path available for the invisible boy. Remember, the hero headed straight down, destroying the rock that blocked his path. But you can continue heading left and walk inside a house where you'll meet an old woman named Granby along with that dog from before. Fun fact about this dog, it was created and named after Kenichi Nishi's dog Tao, and he's shown up in a few of Nishi's other games like Chibi-Robo and Giftopia. Sadly, he passed away in 2009, but I think it's adorable how he's been immortalized in this way. Anyways, if you try talking to Granby, she'll actually recognize your presence and ask if you're whatever you named the hero. In this case, it's Cosmo, so you say yes and she hugs you. Notice how she'll refer to us in all caps, by the way. She asks you to never leave her again and tells you that the people in town thought you died before dozing off to sleep in her rocking chair. We do the same thing in a bed that's on the other side of the house, and in our dreams we meet the Moon Queen. She acts as our mentor throughout the game and teaches us about love. Apparently, we're a special kid who's allowed to visit this world because we have a heart full of love. But it's not strong enough yet to save Moonworld by opening the door of light, so she tasks us with collecting more love. When we wake up in the morning, Granby gives us some clothes so everyone can actually see us. We're still invisible to everyone, but our Rayman figure in this outfit is recognizable enough. Granby also gives you some cookies, and that's the beginning of our story. From there, you're free to play the game as you wish. Travel all across Love-De-Lic and collect love so you're strong enough to open the door of light and save Moonworld. I should probably tell you how exactly we're supposed to collect love though, and I can use Granby for example. So the first thing she tasks us with is buying some bread. She hands us some yenum, bet you can't guess what that stands for, and you head back into town where you eventually find the bakery. When speaking to the baker, he'll mistake you for Granby's dead grandson, in all caps, but using the yenum she handed us, you buy the bread and start heading back. But why rush? This game is an RPG after all, right? Let's talk to all the townsfolk and see what we can figure out about this world. From a talking bird named Yoshida, who refers to us in lowercase, we learn we should go talk to the king as there's a lot he can teach us. So we head to the castle and see him in the courtyard, but he won't speak to us because he's feeding his birds. We can still head inside the castle though and have conversations with everyone inside. There's a living toy inside this castle you can talk to named Noji, and he's a pretty clear reference to Gino from Super Mario RPG. He asks you what kind of games you like, and if you say Game Station, he'll ask to borrow yours. Say yes, and he'll give you one of his toys in return. But head inside the castle's court again, and you'll see you can speak to the king now. He'll give you his ID card and teach you about presenting items to characters. Basically, you pull an item out of your inventory when you're within someone's range, and hit the use button to hear their thoughts on it. If you talk to the minister, he'll mistake you for Granby's dead grandson as well, but if you present the king's card to him, you'll hear his thoughts on the king and get his card. Present someone else's card to someone else and you'll get theirs. It's pretty simple stuff. Exiting the castle and walking around town, you'll notice you've started slouching and your walking speed has gotten slower. You can also see the hero heading towards a bar and you can follow him, but if you try to walk inside, he pushes you out of the way as he exits. That's what that bump was earlier. You can try to follow him some more, but it's game over. You can load a save that only returns you back to the beginning of the day, which isn't too harsh, but let's talk about why we got a game over in the first place. So if you look at the top left of the screen, you'll see a clock with a red line, a red arrow, and a symbol. The line represents the time of day, while the arrow represents your action limit. The symbol represents which day of the week it is. There's Solar Day, Crescent Day, Blaze Day, Tears Day, Leaves Day, Coins Day, and Echo Day. If the line crosses the action limit, then you'll game over. And boy, let me tell you, only half a day is really not a lot of time to work with. However, there are multiple ways for you to deal with the action limit. You can eat a snack like Granby's homemade cookies or the bread to extend the action limit just a little bit. Or you can just go to sleep to reset the timer. And you can go to sleep at any point, there's no limit to that or anything. You can also extend the action limit by obtaining love. I never actually finished telling you how you're supposed to collect love because I got sidetracked, but it's really simple. You get love by helping the people in Love-De-Lic out in various ways. In the case I started to explain earlier, we would have gotten love from Granby if we just went home and gave her the bread. Sometimes you just have to do fetch quests like that, sometimes you have to solve puzzles, sometimes you have to play a game, and sometimes you can just listen to a conversation to collect some love. If you go to sleep after collecting some love, you can level up, and that's how you extend your action limit. And eventually you'll notice the arrow has turned white. That means you can last one or more loops past the action limit until it turns red again, and that's your sign to start heading back to bed so you can go to sleep. It's also represented by a giant heart on your status screen. The more hearts, the more loops. Running out of time is the only way you can get a game over, by the way. There's no damage in this game or anything. That should have been pretty clear when we didn't have so much as a scratch when we fell out of the sky earlier. Early on, I found myself scheduling my entire day around this short action limit and stressing over whether or not I would manage to make it home on time to sleep and level up. But you'll extend your action limit so far and level up so quickly that running out of time becomes a non-issue eventually. And that does take some of the fun out of the game for me. I found the time management challenge really fun. I loved getting as many hearts as I could in one day and then just barely making it back home so I could go to sleep and jump up like 4 levels at once. The level cap is 30 by the way, but you don't need to reach it to beat the game. If you're on top of your stuff, game overs become really tough to get after you unlock a single loop of the action limit, which is level 7 I believe. And by level 7, I had already unlocked the second house you get by progressing through the story, which meant 2 beds for me to sleep in. I just had to choose whichever was more convenient, and it's a double-edged sword, right? I like having a lot of time to do whatever I want, but it comes with the cost of the game losing almost all of its difficulty. Now, if you're familiar with Tulip, or even a game like Gregory Horror Show, this all might sound very familiar because those games also have day and night cycles, and you sleep to level up in those games, and you investigate around the map to learn more about various people and the ways in which you're supposed to complete their storylines. And trust me, the comparisons don't stop there. Specifically to Tulip, which has underground residents that only appear at certain times of day or night, Moon has animals that only appear at certain times of day or night. The first animal you see is a slime, and the hero appears before you and slays it just like he does in the video game Moon. He also clears a path by destroying a rock, but after the hero walks off screen, a man named Doolittle appears and tasks you with bringing all the animals back to life. You just have the power of resurrection. Their spirits typically meander near their corpses, and if you catch them, then they'll return to their bodies. An alien will take them into outer space while leaving some yenum behind for you, and you'll earn some love. There's 51 animals in the game total, and you can check to see how many you've obtained by watching a television show hosted by Doolittle in your house. I thought the animals were good for obtaining a lot of love quickly. Just like the humans, you obtain love from them in a variety of ways. If you inspect their corpses, the game will even show you a description of the animal that might hint towards what you're supposed to do. Maybe you'll have to solve a puzzle for the spirit to appear. Or maybe you just have to wait next to their body. Sometimes you'll have to play a game to catch their spirit. And other times, you just have to wait next to their bodies before they appear. In some cases, you even have to bring an animal an item they need before they can come back to life. But in others, you just have to wait for them to appear. Yeah, there's a lot of waiting in this game, and not just for animals to appear either. This is actually one of, if not my largest problem with Moon. This is a very tedious game. The little things really start to get to you. The long drawn-out animations with interactables that repeat every time, the slow menu navigation, the specific love that you're only able to collect on certain days, which means if you fail, you have to wait a couple days, in some cases entire weeks. And your slow walking speed, which is especially infuriating because they show the player being able to run in one of the game's commercials. Patience is a must if you're gonna play this game, because it's all very monotonous. But I guess there is an upside to doing nothing. You really have the time to stop and smell the roses. Besides being avant-garde in its concept and all its gameplay ideas, Moon is also pretty unique in the way it looks. It has this blend of pre-rendered CG for the backgrounds and pixel art for the characters, along with all the animals and the Moon Queen being 3D modeled with clay and converted into sprites. And I think it all comes together to give the game a surreal aesthetic. We can thank two key people on the staff for the game's look: character artist Kazuyuki Kurishima and background artist Akira Ueda, also both former Square employees. They had to design for a variety of settings, as the game doesn't just take place in the castle town, as you can tell. It starts off there like your typical RPG, or just any old generic hero story with that premise would, you know? But as soon as you make your way out of the town and past the field, you'll find yourself in tropical fields with floating skeleton fish, and in a mushroom forest with little humanoid creatures called the Kakunte, and in a small neighborhood where a traditional Western house and the stereotypical nuclear family inside are neighbors to a stereotypical angry old man who lives in a traditional Japanese house. I really think they knocked a lot of these character designs and locations out of the park. And even the characters I wasn't too big on were still unique and interesting in their own ways. A few characters are references to pop culture and other video games, like Fred the Castle Guard, who's a reference to Freddie Mercury. I like how he wields a microphone in his hand instead of a spear or something. And as I mentioned before, Noji is a reference to Gino, Doolittle, and this blue slime is pretty obvious. My favorite design is definitely Dr. Hager's. He's this genius guy that you come across at one point in the story who has this giant head that's stitched up in the back, and he uses this walking machine to get around. And if you inspect some of the notes he has on his desk, it's heavily implied Dr. Hager is just a puppet, and a Kakunte is inside of him piloting him around. I love that idea so much. Another cool thing about Moon is that you can customize your own soundtrack. And there are these objects in the game called Moon Discs, or MDs, and if you open the game's menu and select the music player on the left, you can program the songs to hear them in any way you want to. Some puzzles even require you to use the Moon Discs. There are only 36 songs to choose from, but the game has a pretty wide array of genres for you to listen to. Bossa Nova, drum and bass, jazz, folk, hip-hop, rock, industrial. You can listen to whatever you want to. Personally, I usually went on the calmer side of things and played ambient music. I think that fits this game best tonally. There's a couple of ways you can come across these Moon Discs. You get some by just completing certain objectives for certain people, but you get most others by buying them from this guy Burn, who's just posted up in a cave with his records. You can listen to his review of each song before you decide to buy it, and as you buy more discs, the records actually leave the crates. And that's some really nice attention to detail. I'm a fan of little stuff like that. As I understand it, most of these Moon Discs were composed by a variety of actual super obscure indie artists. But Love-De-Lic sound team, the Thelonious Monkeys, made all of the game's original music. They also made the best Moon Disc in the game, Kera-Ma-Go. You get this one by helping out Kliss, a girl who works in this restaurant called the Wildcat House but aspires to be a pop idol. If you buy her a cute dress from a shop in town, she'll thank you and then play a game of rock paper scissors look this way against you. And if you win 3 times, she'll give you Moon Disc 35, Kera-Ma-Go. For some reason, you can't listen to it on the same screen she gives it to you though. I think it's because the game is playing its own score at this point, but later, we'll listen to it later. Now I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I consulted a guide a few times while I was playing this game. I always try to get as far as I can in these games without looking for help, because figuring out what to do on your own is where all the fun in the game comes from. You know, I like having to talk to everyone and having to study their schedules and writing down my own notes so I don't forget anything important. I find that kind of gameplay really engaging. But I'm also not above admitting I have a limit for how much annoyance I can take in a game, and Moon can really push my buttons at times. It was never so bad that they forgot to include an important piece of information in the translation, cough cough, but some of the ways you're supposed to collect love in Moon were just a bit too obtuse or convoluted for my liking. Like, a small example of what I'm talking about is obtaining the minister's love. So you present his card to other characters to learn about him, and eventually you learn from Noji that the minister has a lot of books in his room or whatever. And okay, that's a lead, but inspect his room and you just find a bunch of documents. So what do you do next? Well, you present Noji's toy to the minister to see if he has anything interesting to say. And guess what? He does. He says Noji steals books from his room even though he repeatedly scolds him. And well, okay, that's another lead. I guess we should follow Noji now to see if he does anything interesting. Day 1, he does nothing but walk out of his room, walk down this hall, walk to the entrance of the court, and just stand there all day. Okay, well, day 2, he walks out of his room, he walks down the hall, and walks to the court, same as before. In day 3, same exact thing. The same goes for day 4, and 5, and 6, and 7. I don't even know what I'm looking for really, just any irregularity, but no, he does the same exact thing every day. And at this point I was lost. I knew enough that he had something to do with obtaining the minister's love, but I didn't know what that was, until I read a guide that says Noji drops the minister's book on his route down the hall, and you could return it to the minister where you'd finally collect his love. And like, yeah, it's right here hugging the wall, but I don't think I ever would have found it on my own otherwise. Just something like a quick little animation of an object falling from out of his pockets and landing right next to the wall would have been enough to let me know I was on the right track. It still could have been obscured from my sight by the arch above, so if I blinked and missed it, then it would have been my fault for not knowing it's there. Like I said, it's a small example, but the game is full of puzzles like this where you'll spend just a bit more time than should be necessary. But I guess we're getting to that point now where I want to talk about the game's ending. There isn't much else I want to mention besides these things in the game called rum-rums. They're these stone slabs you'll come across in the game that either help you in some of the game's puzzles or give you some moon lore. Also, notice how they look like memory chips. It makes sense cause we're in a video game and they hold important data, right? It's clever stuff. You can't inspect them normally, but you can go to Dr. Hager's lab and use them on a machine that decrypts them. They're actually pretty important for answering some of the game's more confusing questions, like why is the hero the way he is? But that's a pretty spoilery question. And like I said, it's time for me to talk about the rest of the game's story. The ending is my favorite part of the game by far. I think there are multiple ways to interpret it, and I want to share my thoughts on it. So, spoiler warning. So, do you remember when we got the king's card back as we were exploring the castle? Well, if you present it around town, you'll learn from Yoshida that there's some writing on the back of it that says to meet the king in his quarters at night, and that the minister must not know. Very ominous. So you enter the king's chambers at night and present the card to him, where you learn he and Dr. Hager have a plan to fly to the moon, and the king wants to have this conversation with you away from the minister because he'd shut the plan down. Hager has gone missing though, and the king needs you to find him. He also hands you a letter to give to Hager when you do. So you eventually make your way to a haunted house, and inside you find Hager in the basement. He's been locked behind bars by a ghost named Whisper, but it turns out the lever to free himself was inside the cage the entire time. But he frees himself and eventually makes his way back to his laboratory. And when you finally make your way there, you present the letter to him and you learn the king wants you to pilot the rocket to the moon. Hager pretty much agrees, but he tells you the rocket isn't done being built yet. It needs 5 different materials. So you go out to fetch all the items, and when you finish bringing them back to Hager, you can enter the rocket. This is how you get to it, by the way. You have to enter this machine in Hager's lab that'll teleport you to a technologically advanced city where everyone in it is a robot, and the rocket will be in this room on the left. If you inspect the computer that the rocket is hooked up to, you'll learn the trip to the moon will take 4.5 days. And that's a hint that you need to level up enough so you can last the entire voyage. I only got to level 29 when I got in the rocket because there was one love I just could not collect. But that's enough love to last the trip, we should be fine. And before we get into the rocket and fly to the moon, I want to point out a few of the other hero scenes from the moon game that we've experienced in this world, and an original scene with the hero that wasn't featured in the game at all. There's a funny scene where the hero dons the legendary armor, but it really turns out to just be some underwear from the dresser in the bar. And there's also the scene where the hero fights the Paragon, which as we were led to believe was a monster attacking a little girl. But in this version of Moon, the Paragon is her very close friend. We don a costume that looks similar to the Paragon to trick the hero into slaying us, saving the Paragon. And here's the original one. When you bring Hager 4 parts of the rocket, doesn't matter what they are, you'll start seeing these news boards around Love-De-Lic that say, "The missing hero Cosmo. His whereabouts are unknown. Find the hero, find the hero, find the hero." So 2 things of note. 1, we just learned the hero shares our name. Also, that name was in all caps. Again, just remember that. You don't actually have to go out and find the hero, but if you do go searching for him, you can find him in the restaurant after trashing the place. Yeah, the hero's kind of a dick. If you bug him enough, he'll flail his sword around, but I don't think anything else happens. But okay, back to the game's ending. We head inside the rocket and fly to the moon in a trip that literally takes 13 minutes. You have to wait out the entire thing. A few things happen during the flight that keeps it entertaining though. First, Dr. Hager calls in to check in on you a couple times. Then, this guy named Florence appears as a plant and waxes philosophical before withering away. And then a sword pierces a hole through the rocket and you begin to lose air. Some Kakunte appear though and cover it up for you. Did I mention Kakunte means friend in their language, by the way? And after all that, some aliens appear and welcome you to the moon where you land nose first. And take a look at this. All the animals we saved are here as well. Some of these guys were really annoying to get, but it's worth it to see them all here. Doolittle is also here and tells us that the master is waiting for us. You'd think that he was talking about the Moon Queen, but you'd only be half right. As we see from entering the Moon Castle, the Moon Queen and the dragon are one and the same. This entire time, I thought we had to slay the dragon to save the world by opening the Door of Light. But what's going on here? Talk to the master and they'll tell you this is the end. The hero is going to appear soon and slay them, and they need your help to stop him. The Rum-Rums prophesize 2 ways this all ends, and it's up to you to decide how. Your love determines the answer. They then send you off to open the Door of Light, which is buried under a bunch of Rum-Rums. You climb the pile and try your best to open the door, but nothing. The door is just not budging at all. The music intensifies and Doolittle starts to panic because you can't open the door. Giving up, you both return to the master and they tell you that your love wasn't enough to open the door. You failed them. Just then, Yoshida and the hero appear from the rocket ship and the hero kills all the animals for a second time. You have to watch as he casts spells to slay them all and level up a ton before he finally enters the castle, killing Doolittle, Yoshida, the master, and the invisible boy. He dies too, but
Hey! Stop playing that game and go to bed.
Mom yells at you again. The game asks if you want to continue, which if you say yes to, you enter the television again. And that's the end of the game. No credits, no fanfare, nothing. The game just stays on this screen until you close it. So that's the bad ending I got the first time I attempted to finish the game, and it immediately dawned on me that you need to be level 30 to get the good ending. The master damn near spells it out for you at the end there. Your love wasn't ripe enough. And I'm gonna tell you why I was one love away from level 30 at the end game here. I couldn't get Gamakatsu's love. His love is by far the worst designed part of the game in my opinion. He's a character whose love you can only obtain on solar days when he's hosting a fishing competition at this cove out at the tropical fields. And all you need to do is fish 5 fish out of this pond before the time runs out, which is about 1 minute and 30 seconds. All you do is wait for a bite and rhythmically tap the action button until this bar at the bottom of the screen fills up. The problem is, this contest is bullshit. RNG plays a heavy factor here. There's the fact that you have to wait for your rod to actually hook something. Sometimes it's instant, sometimes it can take over 20 seconds. There's also the fact that you can reel in trash from the water, and you have no control over that. And if you fail this contest, you have to wait an entire in-game week before you have another chance at it. Now, the smart player would leave and take care of everything else they have yet to do. There's no linearity to this game at all, so you're free to complete it as you wish. But if you already did everything else in the game, like me, then you'd have no choice but to sleep in bed, passing multiple days over until you reach Solar Day again, just to have another chance at the fishing competition. And if you're a smarter player, you just reload a save you made on Solar Day if you failed the competition. But you're still gonna be reloading that save over and over and over again. I failed to win this contest in every single way possible. One time I got 1 fish instantly and then nothing for the rest of the run, so I had to reload my save. Another time I got 4 fish, but my last one was a piece of trash, so I had to reload my save. There was one round where I got nothing but trash, so I had to reload my save. But the worst round of them all was the one where I reeled in 4 fish and I only needed 1 more. I was even in the middle of reeling in what could have been my last fish, but time ran out, so I had to start all over. I was reloading saves for about an hour before I finally decided to just look at a guide and see if there was an easier or alternative way to do this. And that's when I discovered you can hurry over to the Wildcat house and buy a dish that gives you better fishing odds, and I did have better luck when I tried this. This is even how I beat the competition and eventually got Gamakatsu's love, but I still had to reload the save a couple times using this method as well. I'm sorry for that rant, but this was legitimately one of the most tedious experiences I've ever had with any game ever. Anyways, we finally reached level 30 and we can get the good ending now. Alright, so we enter the rocket again, and watch the flight again, and meet the master again, and using the full power of our love, we open the door of light. I said we open the door of light. Open the door, the door isn't, it's not opening. Yeah, the same exact thing as before is happening here. The door is not moving at all. We go back to the master and they say the same thing as before. Our love still isn't strong enough. So the hero appears again, he kills everyone again, and we get yelled at again. How are we supposed to... Wait a second. Select no, and the child will walk through the door in his bedroom. Multiple doors actually. The rum-roms vanish from the door of light, finally allowing it to open, and the game ends with all the characters we met before standing on the moon. During the credits, you can see they've all crossed over into the real world as well. Wait past the credits and you'll see a few bonus screens. And that's Moon. I know the meta quit to win ending has become a cliche now, but this is a game from '97, I'll give it a pass. You know, the more I think about this ending, the more sense it makes to me that Love-De-Lic chose RPGs of all genres to deconstruct. Not to get too pseudo-intellectual, ludonarrative dissonancy here, but JRPGs have a lot of gameplay tropes that make the player seem like an asshole in hindsight. You're a thief, you're a mass murderer, you play by your own rules. But Moon, being an anti-RPG, forces you to self-reflect on all this by emphasizing the consequences of the heroes, or technically your own actions. When you were playing the game in your bedroom, you didn't know that you were destroying the world because this is what the game looks like to you. You were just fighting monsters and saving Love-De-Lic for everyone's sake. But for those who actually live in this world, well, you're a jerk. Who or what exactly transported the boy into the video game, I'm not sure, but I believe he was sent there to learn a lesson in empathy. You don't kill or steal in Moon. Instead, you heal and you trade toys and you play games and you help people come to terms with what they are. You're also forced to watch as you become a major nuisance in Love-De-Lic. Sometimes you stand up to yourself, but the game will always end with you slaying the dragon. That's why the only way to actually beat the game is to not play it at all. You've learned your lesson by now. Take a break from the video game and apply everything Moon has taught you in the real world to become a better person. If Chulip was a game designed to make you a more compassionate and thoughtful person, then I think Moon was a game designed to make you a more appreciative person. Place yourself in someone else's shoes and try to understand how your actions make them feel. By the way, it's nice when they do, but I don't think video game plots always need to have life lessons. I mean, honestly, I think the morals that both Moon and Chulip preach are pretty elementary, but I also think these games offer nice insights into human nature. Now that I think about it, it might even work to this game's benefit that it's such a slow burn because it gives you more time to think about what it's trying to say. But again, that's only how I interpret the ending. Things might be different for all of you out there. Now, before I end the spoilers, there's one more thing I want to talk about that we still haven't really cleared up yet. What's the deal with the names? Is the invisible boy supposed to be the hero or not? Well, to answer that, we have to look towards the game's original ending that was cut from the game but still left in the files. According to Kimura, they never expected anyone to find this, but it's been uploaded to YouTube with a translation, and it's pretty short, so I'll break it down to you real quick. It starts with the invisible boy standing alone in a raining void until a crying child appears. The player talks to him and he tells you he wants to go home. Walk away from the child and he'll start to follow you. Continue walking north and at one point you'll see the hero's armor and sword scattered around the ground. And eventually you'll make your way to a building where Granby is waiting for her grandson. Not you though, it's the child following you. He'll tell her that he was scared and had a dream that monsters were attacking him every day. Then Tao appears and tells the boy that that was no dream. He really killed all those monsters. And if it hasn't clicked yet, this boy is the hero. Do you remember when we first entered this world and Granby told us that people in town thought we were dead, but when we spoke to people in town, they told us we weren't the boy who died? Well, they were right. We aren't that boy, but everyone incorrectly believed the boy was dead when he was actually right under their noses as the hero in armor the entire time. Everyone besides Granby thought he was dead. Everyone except for one other person. The same person who knows the hero's real identity and wrote his name down on the news board. And that's the minister. In a twisted way, he's kind of the catalyst for the entire game. Let me explain. If you inspect the objects in the minister's chambers, you'll find this document mentioning something called the White Feathered Arrow Ritual. There's no text in the document that details what the ritual is exactly, but later in the game you'll find a rum-rum called the Minister's Treasure. Decrypt it back at the lab and you'll see a depiction of the ritual. The White Feathered Arrow leads to Granby's house and it chose her grandson to be the hero. And for even more proof that the minister is connected to Granby's grandson, you can find the white feathered arrow in a hole that Tao hides his treasure in. Present it to the minister and you'll see him panic. You can also present a photo of Granby to the minister and he'll panic over that as well. Also, if you present the arrow to the castle guard Bilby when he's drunk, you'll learn that the armor is cursed, and whoever wears it loses their sanity, which is why he sees the world like this. Bilby also says the hero's name, which makes me wonder if that's information only people who live in the castle are privy to, or if everyone actually does know the hero's true identity, but they say he's dead because he's no longer the child he once was. I don't know, I really don't know. There's some more cool details, like how that text dump at the beginning of the game foreshadowed all of the key events. And there's some moon lore about birds having better memories than humans, but I don't want to get too sidetracked from talking about this ending. All I was trying to say initially is that you're not Granby's grandson, and the minister is responsible for creating this monster, even if his intentions were noble because he wanted to save Love-De-Guard by slaying the dragon. Back to the ending though. Tao tells the boy that he'll have to heal everyone he injured, and he has to prepare for his eventual death. The game then cuts to the outside of the building, showing many of the hero's victims before showing the boy sitting on a throne and healing them all. Time passes as the boy heals more people, and you start to see him transform. The more people he remedies, the more he starts to look like the dragon he was set out to slay. And after he finishes healing the last person, the hero appears, he pushes the invisible boy aside, and he kills himself before leaving. And that's the entire ending. Yeah, it raises more questions than it answers for me. It deals with the matter of Granby's dead grandson that we kept hearing about, but I think the revised ending they actually went with is better. Kimura has talked about this ending at length on the Onion Games YouTube channel, and I'll link to that below. But I think we're finally done here. You know, I'm still working my way through all the Love-De-Lic games, and I've noticed a lot of recurring elements so far. The day and night cycles, the nonsensical sounds they'll use for speech and sound effects, and casts where everyone is so eccentric that no one really seems like an outlier. But most importantly, these games all have the central theme of love. And I can't think of any other game studio where the staff was so passionate about something that it's the core idea in all of their works. It continues to be a prominent theme in a lot of work they've released since Love-De-Lic folded, and they've went their own ways too. I didn't have much control over this because the first Love-De-Lic game I ever played was Chibi-Robo back as a child. But I still have bittersweet feelings about not starting my journey with this game because this is where it all started. Like, I have a newfound appreciation for all those games since playing this one because I got to see how the formula has evolved for better or worse. But man, I really wish I got to start with this one. I also got to see the ways in which this game inspired Undertale. I think this Yoshida quote sums it up well.
Bobby, if you ain't got love, you'll stop breathing and pass the heck out. Then it's game over for your life.
And I got to see exactly why this game is so niche, right? The gameplay is unorthodox, and it can be very frustrating at times. The story's abstract, and its release was limited to one region. All these factors heavily limit the game's appeal, but I still think Moon is a one-of-a-kind experience. It's a very distinct game, and I think it's a genuine work of art. I feel comfortable calling Moon Remix RPG Adventure the best game I never want to play again. Hey everyone, it's Cosmo. I told you I'd talk about Love-De-Lic again. Am I saying that right? Is it Love-De-Lic? I don't know. Anyways, the Yakuza 3 video should be out next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.